This is stage 2 of the Roses Sweet Wrapper drawing, and this stage is detail. So once we've done the shape stage and we've got the basic shape in place, we're going to start looking at the detail. And this bit can be a bit tricky because especially with sweet wrappers, any kind of packaging, they normally have printed elements such as logos and text, and they can be quite intricate and quite tricky. So this part might take a little bit of time for you. So the first most obvious thing that's jumping out at me is the nice big word roses. So that's where I'm going to start. And what I'd like to do is just split my I'd just like to split that in half so that I can make a judgment on whereabouts halfway is on my drawing. So you can do this even if you're working at, on the screen. You can just sort of make a judgment. It doesn't need to be done with a ruler. So I think that around halfway is where this S starts here. So that's a really good thing to know. And I can see that the little part of the S is creeping over the halfway mark as well there. So that's a good guide for me to put my S and my E and my S on that side, and my nice big R and my O on this side. Now, this isn't going to be perfect, okay? And I've practiced drawing for hundreds of years because I'm indeed hundreds of years old. But so you'll see, I'm sure, that it's not perfect and there are, things that aren't quite right in it. But that's okay. Your drawing doesn't need to be perfect. We just want to keep building these skills so we can make it as accurate as possible. So halfway, just under, is where the R finishes here. Okay, so I'm going to sort of be fairly confident that this R is somewhere around here, the bottom of this R. Okay, I'm going to draw that in like so. So this other part, the sort of the vertical part of the R, here I can see little curves into the corner of this wrapping, and then it goes up at a slight angle like that, cuts across this shaded part here. So at this point, you might well want to or need to rub out some of the other lines that you've drawn just to help you be able to see. And then what I can also see is that the top of the R is just below this line here. Okay, so what I've done is I haven't just tried to do it all in one go. I've looked at the four corners of this letter and I've made a judgment based on the referencing other parts of the image. I've then sort of started to map out where I think it roughly will be. Okay, again, it's not perfect. I can already see that. But I can make adjustments. The longer I spend on a drawing, the more accurate it will be. So I'm going to draw in roughly where I think the round top part of my R is. And then I'm going to draw in this beautiful swoosh here. It's the extension of the top of the R. And I think that that's somewhere around there. And this vertical I'm going to draw in. And you'll see here there's a small overlap or extension part from this R. This font is beautiful. It's trying to mimic a sort of a handwriting. They call it script font. I'm not sure exactly which font it is. It probably is a specific one that someone has designed for Cadbury's. Okay, so getting there, getting a basic shape in that we're largely happy with, can be adjusted at a later point. And then let's get this sweeping R coming all the way across around here. To me, this part looks a little bit too small for how it is in the image. And I think I might have done this a little bit too big, this part. Okay, so as you go through, you need to have these pause points And you make sure you pull your head right up above, because if you're drawing at a 45-degree angle, which I am, because I don't want my hair to be in the way of the camera, sometimes you just really need to stop and put your head right above your drawing, or hold up your drawing in front of you, and you'll get a better view. And from that, you'll start to see a few little errors you might have made with the size and placement of things, okay? But for the purpose of this video, so that we're not here for hours now, as I think that is fine, then we're going to get our O in. And again, remember that we know that our S is probably just in line, if not a little bit lower than the R. Starts up here, and we know this sort of figure of 8 loop in the S overlaps about halfway. So we know that that's roughly there, which means we can make a good guess, okay, that the S comes down here, and this point is where it joins the O. But what I'm going to do is just going to loosely, I'll draw it harder than I would like to for you, but I will just draw in an O shape like that, and just sort of check that I think that that's roughly in the right place. And then once I'm happy, I will then go into that and I will draw more of the detail, like so. Really look closely at how I'm drawing. Very, very scruffy. Okay, I'm not trying, I keep saying this, please keep your hand as loose as possible. I'm not trying to do everything in one perfect stroke. Always drawing over and over again until I'm happy. And then I can always use an eraser and I can get it more neat. I can get the edges neater. But you really must draw like this to start with so that you can get the shapes more accurate. So I'm continuing with my S. Okay, I've got a reference point here where I'd already drawn the bottom of the S because I've sort of worked out that that was about halfway. And there we go. Okay, so I know the E is higher still, and if I was to imagine a sort of a diagonal line that goes up from this S, that's roughly where that E would be sitting. So I know that it's in this space here. So again, I could, if I wanted to, I could draw a sort of a circle. So I know that that's roughly where that E is going. And I know that the S, the loopy part of that S, it starts on this, right on this corner here. So my E's got to come back slightly there, like so. And I know that this creeps into this downward slope somewhere around there. So I've lightly, loosely sketched it out. And once I'm happy with that, I can apply a little bit more pressure, a little bit more certainty with my mark making. And then I start to be more definite about the shape and draw the inside details of the E coming up to the might need to sharpen my pencil at some point soon. There we go. Got the nice looping part of the S here, like so, and then down. Like so. I can see it's not perfect, but I'm pretty happy with that as it stands for the time being. Now then, what else can we add? Well, we've obviously got the Cadbury logo, which again is tricky. Okay, so what I might do is I can see that the Roses logo, or yeah, it is a logo, is repeated along this edge, or the underside, I think, of this package. So what I might do is try and plot in those little lines, and that would give me the right space for where Cadbury goes. So I think that R, I look at it, is going to be in line with the bottom middle part of that R. So we've got a line here where that goes. Got a very small, tiny, tiny little beginning of the O there. We've got the loop of the S. A little bit further along, a little bit higher up, we've got what looks like the E. Then we've got another loop of the S there. So now for the bit that I've been putting off, which is getting the Cadbury logo right. And I've been putting it off because it's always difficult to draw something that's very, very recognisable, because everyone knows what the Cadbury's logo looks like. It's easy to see if I've done it wrong. Okay, so the best thing to do is make sure we mark out the space that it's going into. So again, if we imagine halfway, we just extend our halfway line from before, we can see that that overlaps where the A and the C are. And I think if we were to half the space either side of it, so we're getting sort of putting it roughly into quarters, that helps us to plot where everything goes. So I know that this C starts well within that quarter, so it starts somewhere around here, and then the Y finishes just above here, below the E, just over that quarter mark, so around there. Okay, and I know about the Cadbury logo that it's on a sort of slope. It's always on its side. So I'm going to draw a rectangle slightly on its side, and that's just going to give me the space in which I need my Cadbury's logo to fit into. That's really helpful. Okay, here we go. So we've got our nice, big, beautiful, very, very recognisable, swirling C, like so. And I can see that it's in white, and it's a negative on a dark background. But at the moment, I'm not worrying too much about that. I'm just trying to get it in the right place, and then I can always, when we add the tone, I can correct that. We've got this very recognisable D and B that's part of the Cadbury's logo. You may not have ever really looked at it before, but it's just a nice little touch. They're just symmetrical. The D and the B actually looks like a musical note. Actually, if you look at it in a certain way. Then you got your U, your R, and your Y. So your U, your R, and your Y. Okay, I think that's drawn in and about the right, oh no, that's not the right size. Here we go. This is exactly why you need a rubber on hand. Everyone makes mistakes, even if they're very well practiced. Because believe it or not, I've never drawn this particular wrapper before, and I think that's the point. You can be very well practiced at drawing, but until you do each particular drawing, you're still going to need to change and adapt and learn new ways. Okay, it's all right, the placement of that. I think we'll be fine with how we put that in. Let's go for the top end as well. So again, I think I can judge that the Cadbury logo is going to fit into that space there, and I've made that judgment based referencing the O and the R and the E, and I hope that you're getting the hang of how I do that now, and hopefully it just becomes more intuitive. That means something that you do without thinking about it. So it's a natural skill or process rather. So it becomes intuitive to you. That's how we do things. We're always just looking at other things in the image to reference the size and the shape of elements. And you'll know the right word for that is proportion. Okay, things in proportion, that means that they're in the right size and shape relative to each other. Okay, so a lot of the detail is in now. I am going to just add in a couple of other parts before we start the shading. So I've noticed here there's a colour change. I'm obviously drawing this in grayscale. The image is a colour image, but I've changed it to grayscale to make it easier to to show you how I would draw a pencil drawing. But there is a colour image available, and you can always once you've got to this part and you've got the detailing, you can always decide, rather than using pencil and shading it in just pencil tones, you could use colour. But it's very important that you still show tone when you're applying colour. Sometimes it's easier just to go with pencil to show tone. Okay, I'm just going to get a few vertical lines in here that show where the corrugated heat press, heat sealed part of the pack is, like so, and on this side as well. There we go. Right, so that just about finishes off the second stage of this drawing, which is the detail one. And at this point you can go through and you can erase any lines that you know you've drawn in just to help you. So the construction lines, so the sort of halfway, quarter way lines that I may have drawn, you can get rid of those at this point before you start adding your tone, just to, I guess, make your image simpler and take away anything that isn't required. Okay, good. So that is stage 2 complete.